Sergeant Mills stepped forward when General Hartwell asked the question and immediately felt 17 pairs of eyes assess her with the kind of skepticism reserved for obvious mistakes. "Think she even knows which end the bullet comes out of?" someone muttered from the back of the assembled group. Another voice added, "For 1,000 meters? She'll be lucky to hit the broadside of a barn at 400. The mountain range stretched endlessly before them, a jagged horizon of stone and shadow where morning mist clung to distant peaks. Somewhere in that wilderness, an enemy sniper had taken position at precisely 4,000 meters, a distance that transformed even the most skilled marksman into a gambler playing against impossible odds. 13 snipers had already attempted the shot. 13 had failed. General Hartwell's weathered face showed the strain of a mission hanging by threads. Intel confirmed the enemy position, but the window of opportunity was closing fast. The target would relocate within the hour, and with it, their only chance to eliminate a threat that had already claimed 6 of their forward observers. The general's gaze swept across the remaining assembled personnel, pausing briefly on Sergeant Mills before moving on, clearly expecting someone else to volunteer. Before we continue this intense story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar acts of courage in your community, or perhaps military families are common in your area. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the failed 13, shook his head as he cleaned his rifle. "I've been shooting professionally for 12 years, and that shot is beyond human capability. The wind alone changes direction 3 times across that distance." He glanced at Mills with the expression of someone watching a child reach for a hot stove. "No offense, Sergeant, but this isn't basic training." Lieutenant Colonel Barnes emerged from the command tent, tactical maps still clutched in his hands. His voice carried the weight of desperate authority as he addressed the assembled group. "We need someone who can make this shot. Lives depend on it. The enemy sniper has our forward positions zeroed, and every minute he remains operational costs us tactical advantage." Barnes surveyed the crowd, his eyes passing over Mills without pause, clearly seeking a more promising candidate. Mills remained at attention, her M24 sniper rifle secured across her back, the weapon she had carried through 3 tours and countless impossible situations. The other personnel continued their assessment, some more vocal than others. Captain Torres approached the general, speaking in the kind of stage whisper intended to be overheard. "Sir, perhaps we should consider calling in air support instead. Some targets are simply beyond rifle range, regardless of shooter." The morning air carried the scent of pine and granite, mixed with the metallic tang of weapons, oil, and the nervous sweat of soldiers facing an impossible task. Mills watched the distant mountains, calculating wind patterns and elevation changes with the automatic precision of someone who had spent years studying such challenges. For 1,000 meters was indeed extreme range, but not impossible. Not for someone who understood the science behind the art. Master Sergeant Chun, another veteran marksman who had failed the shot earlier, approached Mills directly. "You sure you want to volunteer for this, Sergeant? That target has already made fools of some very experienced shooters. The distance alone requires calculations most people can't even comprehend, and that's before you factor in atmospheric conditions." His tone carried no malice, only the practical concern of someone who had recently discovered his own limitations. Mills nodded respectfully. "I understand the difficulty, Master Sergeant, but I believe I can make the shot." Her quiet confidence only seemed to increase the skepticism around her. Several personnel exchanged glances that needed no verbal translation. The kind of looks that said some people simply didn't understand their own limitations. General Hartwell checked his watch, the gesture emphasizing their rapidly diminishing time frame. He turned to address the group once more, his voice carrying the urgency of a commander running out of options. "I need a sniper who can guarantee this shot. We have perhaps 40 minutes before the target relocates. The next opportunity may not come for weeks, and we cannot afford to wait." His eyes swept across the assembled personnel, still seeming to look past Mills toward more promising candidates. The tactical situation was deteriorating by the hour. Intelligence reports indicated the enemy sniper had already identified multiple coalition positions and was systematically eliminating forward observers. Each successful enemy shot reduced their operational capabilities and increased the likelihood of mission failure. The fourth Osameter shot represented their only chance to neutralize the threat before it became catastrophic. Mills stepped forward again, this time with more deliberate purpose. "Sir, I request permission to attempt the shot." The words carried across the assembled group like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples of incredulous reaction. Someone behind her actually laughed, a short bark of disbelief that seemed to summarize the group's collective opinion of her chances. General Hartwell's expression shifted from urgency to something approaching disbelief as he processed Mills' request. "Sergeant, do you understand what you're volunteering for? 13 of our most experienced marksmen have already attempted this shot. These aren't recruits or weekend warriors. These are snipers with confirmed kills at distances most people consider impossible." Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stepped closer, his voice carrying the weight of recent failure. "I missed by 18 inches at 4,000 meters. 18 inches sounds close until you realize that at that distance, it might as well be 18 miles. The target is roughly the size of a dinner plate when viewed through the scope, and atmospheric conditions change everything." He gestured toward the distant mountains. Wind speed varies by altitude, temperature creates heat mirages, and the bullet drops nearly 40 feet over that distance. Lieutenant Patterson, who had attempted the shot just 2 hours earlier, shook his head slowly. "The mathematics alone are staggering, Sergeant. We're talking about a projectile that travels for over 4 seconds before impact. In 4 seconds, wind patterns can shift 3 times across different elevation zones. I calculated every variable I could think of, compensated for Coriolis effect, atmospheric density, even the rotation of the Earth itself. Still missed." Mills listened to each account with respectful attention, but her expression remained unchanged. The skepticism around her was becoming more pointed, more specific. Captain Torres consulted his tablet, pulling up ballistic data from the previous attempts. "We have detailed records of every shot, Sergeant. Bullet trajectories, environmental conditions, scope adjustments. The pattern is clear. This target sits at the absolute edge of what's physically possible with standard rifle ammunition." Master Sergeant Chun approached with his rifle still warm from his recent attempt. The enemy sniper chose his position brilliantly. 4,000 meters across a valley with multiple wind zones, elevation changes that create unpredictable air currents, and atmospheric density that varies by the minute. Even if you calculated everything perfectly, the margin for error is essentially zero. 1 degree off in any direction, and the shot goes wild. The assembled personnel formed a loose semicircle around Mills, their body language expressing collective doubt more effectively than words ever could. Arms crossed, heads shaking, skeptical glances exchanged between veterans who had just confronted their own limitations. The kind of professional assessment that dismissed unlikely possibilities before they became embarrassing failures. Corporal Davies, the youngest of the failed 13, spoke with the earnestness of someone still learning hard lessons. "I've been training for situations like this my entire career, Sergeant. Spent thousands of hours on the range, studied under the best instructors the military has to offer. This morning taught me that some targets exist beyond human capability. The distance isn't just challenging, it's prohibitive." General Hartwell checked his watch again, the gesture more pronounced this time. Time was becoming their enemy as much as the distant sniper. Every minute spent in discussion was a minute closer to target relocation and mission failure. "Sir, perhaps we should focus on alternative solutions," Captain Torres suggested. "Artillery strike, drone surveillance, even repositioning our own forces to close the distance. Anything other than sending another shooter to attempt the impossible." The mountain air carried sounds differently at this altitude, creating an acoustic environment where distant sounds seemed closer and nearby conversations felt amplified. Mills could hear equipment being adjusted, weapons being cleaned, and the subtle sounds of soldiers preparing for outcomes they had already accepted as inevitable. The psychological weight of 13 failures hung over the entire group like storm clouds, promising only disappointment. Staff Sergeant Kim, another veteran marksman, approached with tactical charts showing wind patterns and elevation data. The environmental factors alone make this shot a statistical impossibility. Sergeant, we're dealing with a target zone roughly 12 inches square at 4,000 meters, accounting for vital hit probability. Factor in wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric interference, and human error margins, and the success probability approaches zero. Mills studied the charts with genuine interest, but her calm demeanor only seemed to increase the skepticism around her. Major Williams, who had observed all 13 previous attempts, stepped forward with the authority of someone who had witnessed consistent failure. Sergeant Mills, I've watched some of the finest marksmen in our military attempt this shot. Each one brought different techniques, different equipment, different approaches. The result was always the same. Mississippi. The tactical situation continued deteriorating in real time. Radio chatter from forward positions reported continued harassment from the enemy sniper, each transmission underlining the urgency of their mission. Coalition forces were being systematically pinned down by a single shooter whose position remained unassailable through conventional means. The 4th Osameter shot represented their only viable option for mission success. Sergeant First Class Anderson, who had missed the target by mere feet, shook his head with the resignation of experience. The bullet flight time alone creates variables no human can fully account for. For 0.2 seconds from muzzle to target. In that time frame, the target could move, wind patterns could shift, atmospheric pressure could change. We're asking physics to cooperate in ways that violate probability. General Hartwell turned to Mills with the expression of a commander weighing impossible decisions against desperate necessity. Sergeant, these men represent the finest marksmen in our arsenal. If they cannot make this shot, what makes you believe you can succeed where they have failed? The question hung in the mountain air like a challenge, drawing the attention of every assembled soldier toward Mills and her quietly confident response. Mills met the general's gaze with steady confidence that seemed to defy the mathematical reality surrounding them. Sir, I understand the difficulty, but I believe my approach may differ from previous attempts. Her words drew skeptical murmurs from the assembled marksmen, the kind of reaction reserved for statements that challenged established expertise through apparent naivety. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes unfolded detailed topographical maps across the hood of a nearby vehicle, his finger tracing the trajectory path from their position to the enemy sniper's location. The route crosses 3 distinct elevation zones, each with different atmospheric conditions. Air density decreases significantly across this distance, affecting bullet velocity and trajectory in ways that require precise calculation. He looked directly at Mills. Most snipers spend years learning to compensate for variables at half this distance. Master Sergeant Chin pulled up ballistic software on his tablet, the screen displaying complex calculations that represented the mathematical foundation of long-range marksmanship. At 4,000 meters, we're dealing with a bullet drop of approximately 13 feet. The projectile follows a parabolic arc that requires elevation adjustment of nearly 10 degrees. Factor in wind drift, and the scope adjustment becomes a 3-dimensional calculation that pushes human capability beyond reliable limits. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez gestured toward the distant mountains where heat mirages were already beginning to form as morning temperatures rose. Visual distortion becomes a significant factor at this range. The target appears to shimmer and dance through the scope, making precise aim point selection nearly impossible. I spent 15 minutes trying to establish a consistent sight picture before taking my shot. The target seemed to move constantly, even though I knew it was stationary. The wind measurement equipment painted an even more complicated picture. Corporal Davies held an anemometer that showed current conditions, but the readings represented only their immediate position. Across 4,000 meters, we're dealing with multiple wind zones that change independently. Wind speed here might be 8 miles per hour from the northwest, but at 2,000 meters, it could be 12 miles per hour from the west, and at the target location, it might be 6 miles per hour from the southwest. Mills listened to each technical explanation with the attention of someone genuinely interested in the challenges involved. Her questions revealed understanding rather than ignorance, but the assembled group seemed to interpret her composure as evidence of inexperience rather than expertise. Captain Torres shook his head slowly. Sergeant, theoretical knowledge and practical application are entirely different things. These calculations look manageable on paper, but executing them under field conditions with lives hanging in the balance creates pressure that affects even veteran marksmen. The enemy sniper's position had been carefully chosen to maximize defensive advantages. Intelligence reports indicated a concealed position among granite outcroppings that provided both cover and an elevated firing platform. The target zone was approximately 12 inches square, representing the area where a successful hit would neutralize the threat. At 4,000 meters, that target appeared smaller than a pencil eraser through even the most powerful scopes. Major Williams consulted his notes from observing the previous 13 attempts. Each shooter approached the problem differently, Sergeant. Some relied heavily on ballistic computers. Others trusted instinct and experience. Several used different ammunition types, hoping to find a combination that would overcome the environmental challenges. The results were remarkably consistent. Every shot either fell short, went long, or drifted off target due to wind interference. The tactical clock continued counting down toward mission failure. Radio communications from forward positions reported increasing enemy sniper activity, with coalition forces being systematically suppressed by accurate long-range fire. Each enemy shot demonstrated the kind of precision that made their 4th centimeter challenge seem even more impossible. If their opponent could engage effectively at extended range, it suggested intimate knowledge of the environmental conditions that had defeated 13 coalition marksmen. Sergeant First Class Anderson approached Mills with genuine concern rather than skepticism. The psychological pressure alone can affect shot placement, Sergeant. Knowing that 13 experienced shooters have already failed creates mental stress that influences trigger control, breathing patterns, and sight alignment. I've seen excellent marksmen miss routine shots simply because they overthought the technical requirements. Mills examined the ballistic data with a methodical approach of someone accustomed to complex calculations. The numbers painted a clear picture of why the shot had proven impossible for previous attempts. Bullet velocity decreased significantly over 4,000 meters. Wind drift calculations required multiple corrections across different atmospheric zones, and the target size demanded precision that approached the theoretical limits of rifle accuracy. The equipment being used represented the finest available to military marksmen. High-powered rifles with precision barrels, advanced optics with ballistic compensation, and match-grade ammunition manufactured to exacting specifications. Yet despite technological advantages, the fundamental challenges of extreme-range shooting remained unchanged. Distance magnified every variable until small errors became large misses. Staff Sergeant Kim studied atmospheric readings that painted an increasingly complex picture. Humidity levels affect bullet flight characteristics, and mountain environments create microclimates that change rapidly. Temperature variations across the trajectory path influence air density, which directly affects projectile velocity and drop rates. We're essentially shooting through 3 different atmospheric environments between here and the target. General Hartwell's patience was reaching its limit as mission parameters continued deteriorating. Time constraints were becoming as challenging as the technical requirements. The enemy sniper would relocate within 30 minutes, eliminating their opportunity for a clean shot. Alternative solutions required resources and time they simply did not possess. The 4th centimeter shot remained their only viable option, regardless of its apparent impossibility. Word of Mills' request to attempt the impossible shot had spread through the forward operating base like wildfire, drawing personnel from surrounding positions to witness what many expected would be the 14th consecutive failure. Soldiers emerged from command tents, communication stations, and equipment areas, forming an impromptu gallery of observers who positioned themselves to watch the anticipated spectacle. Lieutenant Martinez approached the growing crowd with the kind of curiosity reserved for unlikely events. Heard someone else volunteered for the fourth centimeter shot. That true? His question drew knowing looks from several veterans who had witnessed the morning's string of failures. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded toward Mills. She thinks she can succeed where 13 experienced marksmen failed. The skepticism in his voice was unmistakable. The assembled audience represented a cross-section of military experience, from seasoned combat veterans to newer personnel who had heard stories about impossible shots but never witnessed attempts firsthand. Their conversations created a low murmur of speculation and assessment that served as background commentary to the unfolding situation. Most bets seemed to favor another miss, with discussions focusing on how far off target the shot might be rather than whether it would succeed. Corporal Jackson, who had arrived from a nearby communication post, studied Mills with the frank assessment of someone evaluating obvious mismatches. She doesn't look like sniper material. Too small, too young, probably never faced anything more challenging than qualification ranges. His observation drew agreements from several nearby personnel who shared similar first impressions. The kind of visual evaluation that occurred automatically when assessing capability based on appearance. Mills began unpacking her equipment with methodical precision that suggested familiarity with complex preparations. Her M24 sniper rifle emerged from its case like a precision instrument, each component receiving careful inspection before assembly. The scope mounting process revealed steady hands and systematic attention to detail, but observers seemed to interpret her preparations as routine procedure rather than evidence of expertise. Master Sergeant Thompson arrived from the motor pool area, wiping grease from his hands with a maintenance rag. What's the excitement about? When informed about Mills volunteering for the impossible shot, he laughed outright. For 1,000 meters? Hell, I've seen career snipers struggle with half that distance in perfect conditions. This should be interesting to watch in a train wreck sort of way. The tactical situation continued deteriorating as enemy sniper activity increased in intensity and accuracy. Radio chatter from forward positions reported near misses that suggested their opponent was systematically ranging coalition positions, preparing for a coordinated suppression campaign that would effectively pin down multiple units. The urgency of neutralizing the threat had become critical to mission success. Captain Morrison, recently arrived from battalion headquarters, consulted his tactical display, showing real-time position updates. The enemy sniper has our forward observers completely suppressed. Every attempt to establish overwatch positions results in immediate, accurate fire. We're dealing with someone who understands long-range engagement principles and has chosen terrain that maximizes defensive advantages. His assessment made the 4th centimeter challenge seem even more formidable. The growing crowd of observers began forming informal betting pools based on predicted shot placement. Sergeant Davis started a pool focused on how many meters the shot would miss by, with most estimates ranging from 50 to 200 meters off target. Nobody seemed willing to bet on a successful hit, treating that possibility as so unlikely it wasn't worth considering for gambling purposes. Mills completed her rifle preparation and began studying environmental conditions with instruments that measured wind speed, humidity, temperature, and atmosphere pressure. Her systematic approach suggested familiarity with complex ballistic calculations, but observers seemed to view her thoroughness as evidence of overthinking rather than expertise. The kind of preparation that looked professional but felt inadequate for the challenge involved. Private Henderson, who had joined the growing audience from a supply distribution point, expressed the sentiment many seemed to share. Respect for volunteering, but this is going to be embarrassing to watch. 13 professionals already proved this shot is impossible. Not sure what she thinks she knows that they didn't. His words reflected the collective skepticism that had settled over the assembled group, like a predictable weather pattern. The mountain environment continued presenting challenges that complicated every aspect of the shot attempt. Visual conditions fluctuated as cloud shadows moved across the valley, creating changing light patterns that affected target visibility. Heat mirages were becoming more pronounced as morning temperatures rose, adding another layer of difficulty to an already impossible task. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes reviewed intelligence updates that emphasized the critical nature of their time constraints. Enemy forces are repositioning throughout the sector, suggesting preparation for a coordinated operation. Our window for neutralizing their sniper advantage is closing rapidly. If we cannot eliminate this threat within the next 20 minutes, we may face tactical complications that extend far beyond a single shooter. The assembled personnel continued their assessment of Mills with a frank evaluation common among military units. Physical appearance, equipment handling, and general demeanor were scrutinized for signs of capability or inexperience. Most observations seemed to conclude that while Mills appeared competent for routine duties, the 4th centimeter shot represented a challenge that exceeded reasonable expectations for someone of her apparent experience level. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Mills directly, speaking with the authority of someone who had recently confronted the shot's impossibility. "Sergeant, I want to emphasize the technical challenges you're facing. This isn't about courage or determination. This is about physics and mathematics that push human capability beyond reliable limits. I've been shooting competitively for 15 years, and this morning taught me that some targets simply cannot be engaged successfully with standard equipment and techniques." General Hartwell approached Mills with the expression of a commander forced to consider desperate measures against his better judgment. "Sergeant, I need to be completely clear about what you're attempting. This isn't a training exercise or a demonstration. Lives hang in the balance, and we cannot afford another failure that costs us valuable time. Are you absolutely certain you understand the gravity of this situation?" The crowd of observers had grown to nearly 40 personnel, creating an impromptu amphitheater of skepticism that surrounded Mills' shooting position. Their conversations had evolved from casual speculation to more pointed assessments of probability and outcome. Sergeant First Class Davis updated his betting pool with new categories focused on spectacular failure rather than degrees of missing. The consensus seemed overwhelmingly certain about the inevitable result. Major Williams positioned himself where he could observe both Mills and the assembled crowd, his notebook ready to document what he expected would be the 14th consecutive failure. "I've watched 13 highly qualified marksmen attempt this shot, Sergeant. Each brought different techniques, different equipment, different levels of experience. The environmental factors that defeated them haven't changed. Wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, target distance, all remain exactly the same." Staff Sergeant Kim approached with atmospheric reading equipment that painted an increasingly challenging picture. "Current conditions actually favor the enemy position, Sergeant. Wind patterns have shifted to create more turbulence across the trajectory path, and rising temperatures are generating heat mirages that will distort your sight picture. If 13 marksmen failed under better conditions, attempting the shot now seems particularly inadvisable." Mills continued her methodical preparation, checking scope adjustments and calculating ballistic solutions with the systematic approach of someone accustomed to complex problems. Her calm demeanor in the face of overwhelming skepticism only seemed to increase the doubt surrounding her. Captain Torres shook his head while watching her preparations. "Confidence is admirable, Sergeant, but overconfidence in the face of mathematical impossibility becomes dangerous when mission success depends on realistic assessment of capabilities." The tactical situation had deteriorated to critical levels. Radio communications from forward positions reported that the enemy sniper had effectively suppressed 3 separate observation posts, eliminating their ability to provide overwatch for advancing units. Each successful enemy engagement demonstrated precision that made their own 4th centimeter challenge appear even more impossible by comparison. Lieutenant Patterson, who had missed his attempt by 18 inches, approached Mills with genuine concern. "Sergeant, I need you to understand something. That 18-inch miss represents the closest anyone has come to success today. 18 inches at 4,000 meters is actually exceptional accuracy under these conditions. Even if you matched my performance exactly, it still results in mission failure and continued enemy harassment of our positions." The assembled crowd began expressing more vocal skepticism as Mills completed her preparation. Someone called out from the back of the group, asking if anyone wanted to bet on whether she would even hit the correct mountain. Laughter rippled through the observers, the kind of nervous humor that emerges when people witness events they expect to end badly. Corporal Martinez, recently arrived from a reconnaissance patrol, added his assessment to the growing chorus of doubt. Spent the morning observing the enemy position through high-powered optics. The target zone is roughly the size of a dinner plate at 4,000 meters, positioned among granite outcroppings that provide excellent concealment and protection. Even a near miss won't accomplish anything tactically significant. Mills requested spotting assistance, and a response revealed the depth of skepticism surrounding her attempt. Several experienced personnel declined to participate, expressing reluctance to be associated with what they viewed as an inevitable failure. Master Sergeant Chun eventually volunteered, but his body language suggested he was participating more out of professional courtesy than genuine belief in potential success. The environmental conditions continued changing in ways that favored the enemy position while complicating Mills' task. Cloud cover created shifting light patterns that affected target visibility, while increasing wind speeds generated more atmospheric turbulence across the extended trajectory path. Weather reports suggested conditions would continue deteriorating throughout the morning. General Hartwell checked his watch with increasing frequency, each glance emphasizing their rapidly diminishing time frame. The enemy sniper would relocate within 15 minutes, eliminating their opportunity for engagement and forcing consideration of alternative tactical approaches that required resources they didn't possess. The pressure to attempt the shot was becoming as intense as the pressure to succeed. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez made one final attempt to dissuade Mills from what he viewed as an impossible task. "Sergeant, pride isn't worth mission failure. 13 experienced marksmen have already proven this shot cannot be made under current conditions. Attempting it anyway doesn't demonstrate determination. It demonstrates poor judgment that could cost lives if we waste our remaining time on mathematical impossibilities." The betting pools had evolved to include increasingly creative categories for spectacular failure. Estimates range from missing the entire target area to equipment malfunction under pressure. Nobody seemed willing to consider success as even a remote possibility, treating Mills' attempt as entertainment rather than a serious tactical effort. Mills settled into her shooting position with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to precision work under pressure. Her breathing pattern stabilized, her scope adjustments reflected careful calculation, and her overall demeanor suggested confidence that defied the mathematical reality surrounding the shot attempt. The crowd of observers fell silent, preparing to witness what they expected would be another demonstration of human limitation against impossible odds. The silence that descended over the assembled crowd carried the weight of collective expectation and inevitable disappointment. 40 pairs of eyes focused on Mills as she made final adjustments to her scope, each observer prepared to witness what they believed would be another mathematical demonstration of human limitation against impossible odds. Master Sergeant Chun positioned himself as spotter with the reluctant efficiency of someone fulfilling professional obligations despite personal doubts. Through his high-powered spotting scope, the enemy position appeared as a barely visible disturbance among granite outcroppings 4,000 meters distant. "That's your target, Sergeant. Roughly 12 inches square, partially concealed by natural rock formations, with atmospheric distortion making precise aim point selection nearly impossible." General Hartwell made one final attempt to offer Mills an honorable withdrawal from the impossible task. Sergeant, 13 experienced marksmen have proven this shot cannot be made under current conditions. No one would question your courage if you chose to step aside and allow us to pursue alternative tactical solutions. The enemy will relocate in 12 minutes regardless, and failed attempts serve no tactical purpose. The environmental conditions had shifted decidedly against successful engagement. Wind speeds had increased across multiple elevation zones, creating complex air currents that would affect bullet trajectory in unpredictable ways. Temperature inversions were generating heat mirages that distorted visual clarity, while atmospheric pressure variations influenced ballistic calculations in ways that pushed precision requirements beyond human capability. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes consulted real-time intelligence updates that painted an increasingly urgent tactical picture. Enemy sniper activity has intensified across the entire sector. We're facing coordinated suppression that suggests preparation for a larger operation. Our window for neutralizing this threat has become critical to preventing broader tactical complications that could affect multiple units. Mills completed her breathing exercises with the calm precision of someone accustomed to performing under extreme pressure. Her heart rate stabilized, her grip on the rifle achieved optimal pressure, and her sight picture settled into the kind of steady alignment that experienced marksmen recognized as technically correct. Yet technical correctness seemed inadequate for the mathematical impossibility she was attempting. The assembled observers had organized themselves into informal groups based on their predictions for shot placement. The pessimistic majority expected a miss by significant margins, while a smaller group speculated about spectacular equipment failure under pressure. Nobody seemed willing to entertain success as even a remote possibility, treating the attempt as a demonstration of human hubris against mathematical reality. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez provided atmospheric readings that emphasized the challenge's impossibility. Current wind speed here is 9 miles per hour from the northwest, but at 2,000 meters, it's reading 14 miles per hour from the west, and at the target location, it's approximately 7 miles per hour from the southwest. Compensating for these variations across 4,000 meters requires calculations that approach the theoretical limits of ballistic science. The enemy sniper's position had been chosen with tactical brilliance that maximized defensive advantages while minimizing exposure to return fire. Intelligence reports indicated a concealed platform among natural rock formations that provided both cover and an elevated firing position with excellent fields of observation. The target zone represented perhaps the most challenging engagement scenario possible under field conditions. Mills requested final confirmation of target coordinates, and Master Sergeant Shun provided precise bearing and range information through his spotting scope. Target bearing to 70 degrees. Range 4,000 meters exactly. Elevation approximately 200 feet above our position. Partial concealment behind granite outcropping, with heat mirages creating visual distortion across the entire engagement zone. The tactical clock continued its relentless countdown toward mission failure and enemy relocation. Radio communications from forward positions reported increasing harassment from enemy fire, with coalition forces being systematically pinned down by accurate long-range engagement. Each enemy shot demonstrated the kind of precision that made their own impossible challenge seem even more mathematically absurd. Captain Torres made one final observation about the futility of the attempt. Sergeant, even if you achieved perfect ballistic calculation and ideal environmental compensation, the human element introduces variables that cannot be controlled. Trigger pressure, breathing pattern, minor muscle tremors, all become magnified over 4,000 meters until small imperfections create large misses. The crowd of observers fell into expectant silence as Mills settled into her final shooting position. Her rifle was properly supported, her scope showed clear sight picture alignment, and her overall posture reflected the technical competence of someone familiar with precision marksmanship. Yet competence seemed inadequate for the challenge that had defeated 13 experienced professionals under better conditions. Mill's finger found the trigger with the practiced touch of someone accustomed to precision work under pressure. Her breathing pattern achieved the steady rhythm that marked optimal shooting conditions, while her heart rate maintained a controlled pace that supported accurate shot placement. The mathematical impossibility of the task seemed irrelevant to her calm preparation. The enemy sniper would relocate in 8 minutes, eliminating their opportunity for engagement and forcing consideration of tactical alternatives that required time and resources they simply didn't possess. The 4th centimeter shot remained their only viable option for neutralizing a threat that was systematically degrading their operational capabilities across the entire sector. General Hartwell positioned himself where he could observe both Mills and the distant target zone through field glasses. His expression reflected the resigned expectation of a commander who had exhausted practical options and was now witnessing what he believed would be another demonstration of mathematical reality defeating human determination. Mills' breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that marked the transition from preparation to execution. The assembled crowd of 40 observers held their collective breath as she achieved the steady sight picture that experienced marksmen recognized as technically perfect, despite their certainty that technical perfection would prove inadequate for the mathematical impossibility she was attempting. Master Sergeant Chin's voice carried through his spotting scope with professional precision despite personal skepticism. Wind reading steady at current measurement. Heat mirages creating approximately 6-inch visual displacement at target zone. Atmospheric conditions stable for the next 30 seconds. Your call, Sergeant. His tone suggested he was fulfilling professional obligations while expecting to document another failure. The enemy sniper's position remained partially concealed among granite outcroppings that created natural camouflage and defensive protection. Through the high-powered optics, the target zone appeared as a barely visible disturbance, roughly 12 inches square, with atmospheric distortion making precise aim point selection nearly impossible even under ideal conditions. General Hartwell observed through field glasses with the resigned expression of a commander who had exhausted practical alternatives and was now witnessing what he believed would be the 14th consecutive demonstration of human limitation against mathematical reality. His watch showed 6 minutes remaining before enemy relocation would eliminate their engagement opportunity entirely. The tactical situation had deteriorated to critical levels across the entire operational sector. Radio communications from forward positions reported systematic suppression by enemy sniper fire that was pinning down multiple units and preventing effective overwatch operations. Each enemy engagement demonstrated precision that made their own 4th centimeter challenge appear even more impossible by comparison. Mill's finger found the trigger with the practiced touch of someone accustomed to precision work under extreme pressure. Her scope showed clear sight picture alignment despite heat mirages that distorted visual clarity across the extended engagement zone. The crosshairs settled on the target zone with a steady precision that marked optimal shooting conditions, yet observers remained convinced that optimal conditions were inadequate for success. The assembled crowd had organized itself into an impromptu gallery of expectant witnesses, each prepared to observe what they believed would be another mathematical demonstration of human futility against impossible odds. Betting pools had evolved to include increasingly specific predictions about shot placement, with estimates ranging from 50 meters short to 200 meters over the target zone. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez provided final atmospheric readings that emphasized the challenge's mathematical impossibility. Current ballistic computer calculations show bullet drop of 39 feet over 4,000 meters, with wind drift compensation requiring elevation and windage adjustments that approach the mechanical limits of standard scope adjustment ranges. Even perfect calculation execution offers marginal probability of success. The enemy position had been chosen with tactical brilliance that maximized every possible defensive advantage while minimizing exposure to return fire. Intelligence reports confirmed a concealed platform among natural rock formations that provided excellent cover and elevated fields of observation across the entire valley approach. The engagement represented perhaps the most challenging scenario possible under field conditions. Mills achieved the final scope adjustment with movements so precise they appeared almost mechanical in their efficiency. Her rifle was properly supported, her breathing pattern had stabilized into optimal rhythm, and her overall posture reflected the technical competence of someone familiar with extreme-range precision marksmanship. Yet technical competence seemed inadequate for the mathematical impossibility she was attempting. The mountain environment continued presenting challenges that complicated every aspect of the engagement. Visual conditions fluctuated as cloud shadows moved across the valley, creating changing light patterns that affected target visibility and scope clarity. Rising temperatures generated increasingly pronounced heat mirages that distorted sight pictures and made precise aim point selection nearly impossible. Captain Torres made one final observation about the futility of the attempt. The bullet flight time alone creates variables no human can fully control, Sergeant. 4.3 seconds from muzzle to target over this distance. In that time frame, atmospheric conditions can shift, wind patterns can change, and target movement becomes possible. We're asking physics to cooperate beyond reasonable probability. Mills' heart rate maintained the controlled pace that supported accurate shot placement under pressure. Her grip on the rifle achieved optimal pressure distribution, while her trigger finger found the precise position that would ensure clean break without disturbing sight alignment. The mathematical impossibility of the task seemed irrelevant to her calm execution of proper shooting fundamentals. The crowd of observers fell into absolute silence as Mills prepared for trigger activation. 40 pairs of eyes focused on her position with the intense attention reserved for events that everyone expected to end in spectacular failure. The betting pools had closed, with overwhelming consensus that the shot would miss by significant margins while demonstrating human limitation against mathematical reality. Master Sergeant Chun adjusted his spotting scope for optimal clarity despite atmospheric distortion that made target observation challenging even with high-powered optics. Ready when you are, Sergeant. Target bearing steady. Range confirmed at 4,000 meters. Environmental conditions as stable as they're going to get under current atmospheric circumstances. His professional competence couldn't mask his expectation of witnessing another demonstration of impossible odds defeating human determination. General Hartwell's field glasses remained focused on the distant target zone, where the enemy sniper maintained position among granite outcroppings that provided natural concealment and tactical advantage. 5 minutes remained before relocation would eliminate their engagement opportunity and force consideration of alternative solutions that required resources and time they simply didn't possess. Mills' trigger finger applied pressure with a precise control that marked thousands of hours of training under every conceivable condition. The rifle's mechanism responded with mechanical precision. The firing pin struck the primer with perfect timing, and the cartridge ignited with the explosive force that would propel a single bullet across 4,000 meters of impossible terrain toward a target that 13 experienced marksmen had failed to engage successfully. The muzzle blast echoed across the mountain valley with sharp authority that commanded immediate attention from every observer. 40 pairs of eyes tracked the rifle's recoil pattern, noting the controlled way Mills managed the weapon's response and maintained sight picture alignment, even as the bullet began its 4.3-second journey toward mathematical impossibility. Master Sergeant Chen's spotting scope remained locked on the distant target zone, where heat mirages continued, creating visual distortion that made observation challenging even with high-powered optics. The enemy position appeared as a barely visible disturbance among granite outcroppings, partially concealed by natural rock formations that provided both tactical advantage and defensive protection against return fire. General Hartwell's field glasses focused intently on the target area, where atmospheric conditions created the kind of visual interference that had contributed to 13 previous failures. For minutes remained before enemy relocation would eliminate their engagement opportunity entirely, making this shot their final chance to neutralize a threat that was systematically degrading operational capabilities across the entire sector. The bullet traveled through multiple atmospheric zones with ballistic characteristics that changed significantly over the extended trajectory path. Initial velocity decreased according to predictable mathematical formulas, while wind drift accumulated across different elevation zones, where air currents moved in varying directions and speeds that required precise compensation for successful engagement. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez tracked the bullet's theoretical path through ballistic calculations that painted a clear picture of the mathematical challenges involved. Projectile drop approaches 40 feet over this distance, requiring elevation compensation that pushes scope adjustment ranges toward mechanical limits. Wind drift calculations indicate lateral displacement that demands windage corrections beyond what most equipment can reliably provide. The assembled crowd of observers maintained absolute silence as they waited for impact confirmation from the distant target zone. Their collective skepticism had crystallized into certain expectation of failure, with most personnel prepared to witness another demonstration of human limitation against mathematical impossibility. Betting pools had closed with overwhelming consensus favoring spectacular miss by significant margins. Mills maintained her shooting position with the professional composure of someone accustomed to extreme-range precision work under pressure. Her breathing pattern remained controlled, her grip on the rifle stayed optimal, and her overall demeanor reflected confidence that seemed to defy the mathematical reality surrounding the shot's impossibility. Technical execution had been flawless despite environmental challenges. The mountain environment presented every conceivable obstacle to successful long-range engagement. Atmospheric pressure variations affected ballistic performance in ways that required complex compensation, while temperature gradients created air density changes that influenced projectile velocity and trajectory calculations. Heat mirages distorted visual clarity, making precise aim point selection nearly impossible even under optimal conditions. Captain Torres consulted his ballistic computer one final time, reviewing calculations that emphasized the shot's mathematical impossibility. Even with perfect environmental compensation and ideal technical execution, probability of success approaches statistical insignificance over this distance. 13 experienced marksmen have already demonstrated that current conditions exceed human capability limits. The tactical situation continued deteriorating as enemy sniper activity intensified across forward positions. Radio communications reported systematic suppression that was effectively pinning down multiple units and preventing overwatch operations essential to mission success. Each enemy engagement demonstrated precision that made their own impossible challenge seem even more mathematically absurd. Master Sergeant Chen's spotting scope provided the clearest available view of the target zone despite atmospheric distortion that affected even high-powered optics. Visual conditions remained challenging due to heat mirages and elevation-related atmospheric interference. Target zone partially concealed by natural rock formations, with granite outcroppings providing excellent defensive cover for enemy position. The enemy sniper's tactical advantages included not only superior positioning, but also intimate knowledge of local environmental conditions that affected long-range engagement parameters. Intelligence reports suggested extensive preparation and reconnaissance that had resulted in optimal defensive placement among terrain features that maximize concealment while providing excellent fields of observation and fire. Mills' rifle had performed with mechanical precision that reflected proper maintenance and optimal ammunition selection. The weapon's accuracy potential was well established through previous testing and environmental conditions, while challenging, remained within operational parameters for extreme-range engagement attempts. Technical factors have been optimized despite mathematical impossibility. General Hartwell's watch showed 3 minutes remaining before enemy relocation would eliminate their engagement opportunity and force consideration of alternative tactical approaches that required time and resources they simply didn't possess. The 4th Osameter shot represented their only viable option for neutralizing a threat whose continued operation would compromise mission objectives across multiple operational zones. The assembled observers prepared to witness impact results with the resigned expectation of personnel who had already observed 13 consecutive failures under similar conditions. Their collective skepticism reflected professional assessment based on mathematical reality and demonstrated impossibility. Yet Mill's confidence had remained unshaken throughout the entire preparation and execution process. Staff Sergeant Kim provided final atmospheric readings that confirmed the challenging environmental conditions that had contributed to previous failures. Wind patterns remain complex across multiple elevation zones. Temperature variations continue generating visual distortion, and atmospheric pressure changes affect ballistic calculations in ways that push precision requirements beyond reliable human capability under field conditions. For 0.3 seconds, stretched into an eternity as 40 observers held their collective breath, watching the distant target zone through various optical devices, while waiting for confirmation of what they unanimously expected would be another spectacular demonstration of mathematical impossibility, defeating human determination and flawless technical execution. Master Sergeant Chen's spotting scope remained locked on the enemy position with unwavering focus despite atmospheric distortion that continued creating visual interference across the 4th Osameter engagement zone. His professional composure couldn't entirely mask the expectation of witnessing another failure that would join 13 previous attempts, improving the shot's fundamental impossibility under current environmental conditions. The bullet traveled through its ballistic arc according to precise mathematical principles that govern projectile motion over extended distances. Velocity decreased predictably as atmospheric resistance accumulated, while gravitational force created the parabolic trajectory that required nearly 40 feet of elevation compensation to achieve theoretical impact at the designated target coordinates. General Hartwell's field glasses tracked the theoretical impact zone where granite outcroppings provided natural concealment for the enemy's sniper position. His expression reflected the resigned expectation of a commander who had exhausted practical alternatives and was now witnessing what he believed would be the final demonstration that some tactical challenges exceeded human capability regardless of courage or technical competence. The mountain environment continued presenting every conceivable obstacle to successful extreme-range engagement. Wind patterns shifted across multiple elevation zones in ways that affected bullet trajectory through complex atmospheric interactions, while temperature gradients created air density variations that influence projectile performance according to ballistic principles that push precision requirements beyond reliable human execution. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez consulted his ballistic computer for final trajectory calculations that emphasized the mathematical challenges Mills had attempted to overcome. Projectile flight time over 4,000 meters allows multiple opportunities for environmental variables to influence bullet path in ways that accumulate into significant displacement from intended point of impact, regardless of perfect initial calculation and execution. The assembled crowd of observers maintained absolute silence as they prepared to witness impact results through various optical devices that provided different perspectives on the distant target zone. Their collective skepticism had evolved from professional assessment to certain expectation, with most personnel already mentally preparing to observe another confirmation of human limitation against mathematical reality. Mills remained in her shooting position with the professional composure that marked experienced marksmen accustomed to extreme-range precision work under pressure. Her breathing pattern stayed controlled, her grip on the rifle maintained optimal pressure, and her overall demeanor reflected confidence that seemed to contradict the mathematical impossibility she had just attempted to overcome through technical execution alone. The tactical clock continued its relentless countdown toward enemy relocation and mission failure. 2 minutes remained before the enemy sniper would abandon his current position, eliminating their engagement opportunity and forcing consideration of alternative solutions that required resources and time they simply didn't possess. The fourth OSAM-meter shot represented their final chance for tactical success. Captain Torres reviewed atmospheric data that painted a clear picture of the environmental challenges that had contributed to 13 previous failures. Current conditions actually favor enemy defensive advantages, with wind patterns, temperature variations, and atmospheric pressure changes all combining to create engagement parameters that approach the theoretical limits of what human marksmen can reliably accomplish under field conditions. The enemy position among granite outcroppings had been chosen with tactical brilliance that maximized every possible defensive advantage while minimizing exposure to return fire. Intelligence reports confirmed a concealed platform that provided excellent cover, elevated fields of observation, and intimate knowledge of local environmental conditions that affected long-range ballistic calculations in unpredictable ways. Master Sergeant Chen's spotting scope provided the clearest available view of the impact zone despite heat mirages and atmospheric distortion that affected even high-powered optics designed for extreme-range observation. Visual clarity remains challenging due to elevation-related atmospheric interference and natural camouflage that makes target confirmation difficult even under optimal viewing conditions. The assembled personnel had organized themselves according to their predictions for shot placement, with the pessimistic majority expecting significant miss margins, while a smaller group speculated about the specific nature of environmental factors that would cause trajectory deviation. Nobody seemed prepared to entertain success as even a remote possibility given the mathematical evidence against it. Radio communications from forward positions continued reporting systematic enemy sniper harassment that was effectively suppressing coalition overwatch operations across multiple tactical zones. Each enemy engagement demonstrated precision that emphasized the critical importance of neutralizing this threat while simultaneously highlighting the mathematical impossibility of their own fourth OSAM-meter engagement attempt. Mills' technical execution had been flawless according to every measurable standard of extreme-range marksmanship. Scope adjustment, breathing control, trigger pressure, rifle support, and environmental compensation had all been performed with textbook precision that reflected extensive training and experience. Yet technical perfection seemed inadequate for the mathematical challenges involved. The mountain valley carried sound differently at this elevation, creating acoustic conditions where distant impacts might be audible despite the fourth OSAM-meter separation between shooting position and target zone. Observers listened intently for any indication of bullet impact, while maintaining visual focus on the enemy position through optical devices that provided varying degrees of clarity. General Hartwell's watch showed 90 seconds remaining before tactical parameters would shift irreversibly toward mission failure and enemy escape. The pressure to achieve impossible success had become as intense as the mathematical evidence against such success, creating a situation where desperate necessity confronted proven impossibility in ways that tested both human determination and physical reality. The sharp crack of bullet impact against granite echoed across the mountain valley with unmistakable authority, cutting through the atmospheric stillness like a thunderclap that demanded immediate attention from every observer who had been prepared to witness another demonstration of mathematical impossibility, defeating human determination and flawless technical execution. Master Sergeant Chen's voice emerged from behind his spotting scope with professional precision that couldn't mask his complete shock at what he was observing through high-powered optics. Hit. Direct hit on target. Enemy sniper down. His words carried across the assembled crowd with the kind of disbelief that marked the collision between expected reality and impossible achievement. The 40 observers who had maintained absolute silence while expecting spectacular failure suddenly erupted into chaos as the implications of Chen's confirmation registered across their collective consciousness. Voices overlapped in expressions of disbelief, amazement, and professional shock that such a shot could be executed successfully under conditions that had defeated 13 experienced marksmen. General Hartwell's field glasses remained focused on the distant target zone, where the enemy sniper position had been neutralized with surgical precision that exceeded every reasonable expectation based on mathematical probability and demonstrated impossibility. His expression shifted from resigned expectation to professional amazement as he processed confirmation of tactical success achieved through means he had considered impossible. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez dropped his ballistic computer as the reality of successful engagement overwhelmed his mathematical certainty that such accuracy was impossible under current environmental conditions. For 1,000 meters, she actually made a 4th centimeter shot in conditions that defeated 13 professionals. The physics don't support this level of precision, yet the evidence is undeniable. The tactical situation transformed instantaneously from desperate impossibility to mission success as radio communications from forward positions confirmed immediate cessation of enemy sniper harassment. Coalition forces reported ability to resume overwatch operations and tactical movement that had been suppressed for hours by accurate long-range fire from the now neutralized threat. Captain Torres stared at his atmospheric readings and ballistic calculations with the expression of someone whose professional understanding had been fundamentally challenged by empirical reality. Every environmental factor indicated this shot should have failed. Wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric interference, all the variables that created insurmountable obstacles for previous attempts. Yet somehow perfect compensation was achieved. Mills remained in her shooting position with the same professional composure she had maintained throughout the entire process, as if successfully engaging targets at 4,000 meters represented routine procedure rather than mathematical impossibility. Her calm demeanor in the face of achieving the impossible only amplified the shock and amazement of the 40 witnesses who had expected to document another failure. The assembled crowd began expressing their disbelief in increasingly vocal terms as the reality of witnessing impossible accuracy penetrated their collective consciousness. Betting pools that had focused on degrees of failure suddenly became irrelevant, replaced by attempts to understand how mathematical impossibility had been overcome through human skill and determination. Master Sergeant Chun emerged from behind his spotting scope with the expression of someone whose professional worldview had been fundamentally altered by witnessing events that contradicted established principles of extreme-range marksmanship. I've been observing long-range shots for 15 years, and I've never seen anything approach this level of precision under these environmental conditions. This defies everything I understand about ballistic limitations. The enemy sniper's position among granite outcroppings now showed clear evidence of successful engagement, with confirmation that the threat which had systematically suppressed coalition operations for hours had been eliminated through a single shot that achieved precision beyond reasonable expectation. Intelligence reports would later confirm that the enemy marksman was considered among the finest snipers in their organization. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes approached Mills with the expression of a senior officer whose tactical assumptions had been completely overturned by empirical demonstration of capability that exceeded theoretical possibility. "Sergeant, I need to understand how you achieved accuracy that 13 experienced marksmen couldn't accomplish under identical conditions. What techniques or calculations did you employ that differed from standard extreme-range engagement protocols?" The mountain environment that had presented seemingly insurmountable obstacles to successful engagement now seemed irrelevant in the face of demonstrated mastery over environmental variables that had defeated multiple professional attempts. Wind patterns, atmospheric distortion, temperature gradients, all the factors that created mathematical impossibility had been overcome through skill that redefined understanding of human capability. General Hartwell approached Mills with the professional respect reserved for personnel who achieved tactical objectives under impossible circumstances. "Sergeant Mills, you have just accomplished what our best marksmen considered impossible. Your shot has eliminated a critical threat and restored our tactical advantage in this sector. I need to understand your background and training that enabled this level of precision. The assembled personnel who had expressed unanimous skepticism about Mill's chances now found themselves reconsidering their assessment of both her capabilities and their understanding of extreme-range marksmanship principles. Professional humility replaced skepticism as 40 witnesses acknowledged they had observed something that challenged their fundamental assumptions about human limitation and mathematical possibility. Staff Sergeant Kim consulted his atmospheric monitoring equipment with the expression of someone whose scientific understanding had been confronted by empirical results that seemed to violate established principles. Environmental conditions that should have made precision impossible were somehow overcome through compensation techniques that exceeded standard ballistic calculation methods and demonstrated mastery of variables most marksmen consider uncontrollable. The tactical success achieved through Mill's impossible shot rippled across the entire operational sector as coalition forces regained freedom of movement, an overwatch capability that had been suppressed for critical hours. Mission parameters shifted from desperate impossibility to successful completion, with strategic implications that extended far beyond a single engagement. Mills finally rose from her shooting position with the same methodical precision that had characterized her entire approach, carefully safing her rifle and beginning post-shot procedures as if successfully engaging targets at impossible distances represented standard operating procedure rather than a demonstration that had redefined the limits of human marksmanship capability for 40 stunned witnesses. General Hartwell approached with the expression of a commander whose tactical worldview had been fundamentally altered by witnessing impossible achievement under conditions that had defeated his most experienced personnel. Sergeant Mills, I need to understand your background. What training or experience enabled you to accomplish what 13 professional marksmen considered mathematically impossible under identical environmental conditions? The question drew immediate attention from every assembled observer, all of whom had shifted from skepticism to intense curiosity about how their assumptions regarding human limitation had been so completely overturned by empirical demonstration of capability that exceeded theoretical possibility. Professional humility had replaced confident prediction as 40 witnesses acknowledged they had observed something extraordinary. Mills secured her equipment with the same attention to detail she had shown throughout the entire process, her calm demeanor suggesting that achieving 4th centimeter precision represented routine competence rather than impossible accomplishment. When she finally responded to the general's question, her words carried quiet authority that commanded absolute attention from the assembled crowd. I trained under Gunnery Sergeant Patricia Hawkins at the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School Advanced Program. Mills said with matter-of-fact delivery that somehow made her achievement seem even more remarkable. She specialized in extreme-range precision techniques that most programs don't cover. Environmental compensation methods, atmospheric calculation refinements, and psychological preparation for shots that approach theoretical possibility limits. The name Patricia Hawkins struck several experienced personnel like a physical blow, their expressions shifting from curiosity to something approaching awe as they processed the implications of Mill's training background. Master Sergeant Chen's voice carried barely contained amazement as he spoke. Patricia Hawkins? The ghost of Fallujah? She holds the record for longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history. Trained fewer than 20 students in her entire career. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez consulted his mental database of military legends with the expression of someone whose professional understanding was being completely restructured by new information. Hawkins disappeared from active service 8 years ago after achieving confirmed kills that redefined extreme-range engagement doctrine. Her techniques were classified, her methods never formally documented. Most people assumed her capabilities were exaggerated through unit folklore. General Hartwell's expression reflected growing comprehension as he processed the significance of Mill's training pedigree. The advanced program under Hawkins was discontinued after her retirement because no other instructor could replicate her results. The Pentagon classified her techniques as beyond standard military doctrine, too specialized for general implementation. You're saying she trained you personally? Mills nodded with the understated confidence of someone whose capabilities had been forged through extraordinary instruction under impossible conditions. 2 years of individual training focused specifically on shots that conventional wisdom considers impossible. Atmospheric compensation techniques that require mathematical calculation beyond standard ballistic computers. Environmental reading methods that most marksmen never encounter in their entire careers. The assembled crowd processed this revelation with the kind of stunned recognition that accompanies suddenly understanding previously inexplicable events. Captain Torres shook his head slowly as the implications registered across his consciousness. That explains everything. You weren't attempting an impossible shot. You were executing specialized techniques designed specifically for conditions we considered beyond human capability. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes approached with professional respect that reflected complete revision of his assessment regarding Mills' background and capabilities. The Hawkins program was legendary among senior personnel, Sergeant. Stories circulated about training methods that pushed human performance beyond established limits. Most of us assumed those stories were enhanced through repetition and unit pride rather than empirical fact. The tactical success Mills had achieved suddenly seemed less miraculous and more explicable as the assembled personnel understood they had witnessed not impossible luck, but extraordinary skill applied under precisely the conditions for which he had been trained. Professional amazement remained, but it was now tempered by comprehension of the specialized preparation that had enabled such remarkable precision. Master Sergeant Chun consulted his knowledge of military history with growing respect for the lineage Mills represented. Hawkins disappeared after achieving a confirmed kill at 4,700 meters in Iraq. The Pentagon buried the details, but unit reports suggested she developed compensation techniques that exceeded standard military doctrine. Her students were rumored to achieve accuracy that defied conventional understanding. Mills completed her equipment securing procedures with the same methodical attention that had characterized her entire approach, seemingly unaffected by the revelation that her background had transformed 40 skeptics into believers. Her training under Patricia Hawkins explained not only her confidence in attempting the impossible shot, but also her calm certainty throughout the process. The mountain environment that had seemed to present insurmountable obstacles now appeared in different context, as the assembled personnel understood they had witnessed specialized techniques designed specifically for such challenging conditions. Environmental variables that had defeated 13 conventional attempts had been overcome through methods that exceeded standard military training. General Hartwell's expression reflected professional acknowledgement of encountering capability that exceeded his previous understanding of human marksmanship potential. Sergeant Mills, your achievement today has restored our tactical advantage and eliminated a critical threat. More importantly, you've demonstrated that some limits we consider absolute are actually boundaries that can be transcended through extraordinary preparation and exceptional skill. The assembled observers who had expressed unanimous skepticism about Mills' chances now found themselves reconsidering not only their assessment of her capabilities, but their fundamental understanding of what constituted impossible achievement versus specialized competence applied under appropriate conditions. The transformation in atmosphere was immediate and profound as 40 witnesses who had expressed unanimous skepticism about Mills' capabilities now gathered around her with a respectful curiosity reserved for personnel who had demonstrated extraordinary competence under impossible conditions. Professional humility had completely replaced confident prediction as the assembled group acknowledged they had witnessed something that redefined their understanding of human capability. General Hartwell approached Mills with the formal bearing of a commander preparing to recognize exceptional achievement under combat conditions. Sergeant Mills, your precision today eliminated a critical threat that had suppressed our operations for hours. More significantly, You accomplished this through skill that exceeded every reasonable expectation based on conventional understanding of extreme-range marksmanship limitations. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had been among the most vocal skeptics regarding the shot's possibility, extended his hand with genuine professional respect. "Sergeant, I owe you an apology. My assessment was based on conventional limitations, not specialized training under Patricia Hawkins. Your achievement today has taught me that some boundaries I considered absolute are actually challenges that can be overcome through extraordinary preparation." The 13 marksmen who had failed previous attempts approached Mills with expressions that reflected professional acknowledgement of superior capability rather than embarrassment at their own limitations. Master Sergeant Chin spoke for the group with quiet authority. "We attempted conventional solutions to an unconventional problem, Sergeant. Your success demonstrates that specialized techniques exist beyond standard military doctrine, and we're honored to have witnessed their application." Captain Torres consulted his ballistic data with newfound respect for calculations that had seemed impossible just minutes earlier. "Your environmental compensation methods exceed anything in our standard protocols, Sergeant. The precision you achieved suggests mathematical understanding that pushes atmospheric calculation beyond conventional limits. The military could benefit significantly from documentation of these techniques." Mills responded to the recognition with the same understated professionalism that had characterized her entire approach, accepting praise while maintaining focus on mission completion rather than personal achievement. "The techniques Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins taught me were designed for exactly these conditions, sir. Extreme range, challenging environment, critical mission requirements. Today simply provided the appropriate application opportunity." Lieutenant Colonel Barnes approached with tactical maps, showing the broader operational implications of Mills' successful engagement. "The enemy sniper you neutralized was coordinating suppression across 3 tactical zones, Sergeant. Your shot has restored freedom of movement for multiple units and eliminated a threat that was systematically degrading our operational effectiveness throughout the sector." The assembled crowd began expressing genuine appreciation for Mills' achievement as the tactical significance became clear through radio communications from forward positions. Coalition forces reported immediate restoration of overwatch capability and tactical movement that had been suppressed for critical hours by the now neutralized threat. General Hartwell's expression reflected the professional satisfaction of a commander whose tactical problems had been solved through exceptional individual performance. "Sergeant Mills, I'm recommending you for commendation based on today's achievement. Your precision under impossible conditions represents the kind of capability that defines military excellence and mission success." Before we conclude this remarkable story, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What was your favorite moment in this incredible demonstration of skill and determination? Have you ever witnessed similar courage or expertise in your own experiences? Drop a comment and share your thoughts about Sergeant Mills' extraordinary achievement, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when it mattered most. The tactical success rippled across the entire operational area as enemy sniper harassment ceased completely, allowing coalition forces to resume normal operations and tactical positioning that had been impossible under previous threat conditions. Mission parameters shifted from desperate impossibility to successful completion with strategic implications that extended far beyond a single engagement. Master Sergeant Chin approached Mills with professional curiosity about techniques that had enabled such remarkable precision. "The atmospheric compensation methods you employed exceed standard ballistic calculation protocols, Sergeant. Your ability to read environmental variables that most marksmen consider uncontrollable suggests training in specialized observation and calculation techniques that could benefit advanced marksmanship programs." Mills accepted the recognition with quiet dignity while maintaining focus on practical implications rather than personal achievement. "The techniques exist for personnel willing to invest the time and effort required for mastery, Master Sergeant. Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins always emphasized that extraordinary capability requires extraordinary preparation under extraordinary conditions. The 40 witnesses who had assembled to observe what they expected would be another demonstration of human limitation against mathematical impossibility now found themselves having witnessed something that challenged their fundamental assumptions about the boundaries of human capability when applied through specialized training and exceptional preparation. Staff Sergeant Kim consulted his atmospheric monitoring equipment with renewed respect for environmental variables that had been overcome through techniques that exceeded his understanding of ballistic compensation methods. Your success today demonstrates that some limitations we consider absolute are actually boundaries that can be transcended through specialized knowledge and extraordinary skill application. The mountain environment that had presented seemingly insurmountable obstacles to 13 conventional attempts now appeared in different contexts. As assembled personnel understood, they had witnessed specialized techniques designed specifically for such challenging conditions. Environmental variables that had defeated multiple professional efforts had been overcome through methods that exceeded standard military training protocols. General Hartwell concluded the recognition with formal acknowledgement of achievement that would be documented and remembered throughout military channels. Sergeant Mills, your precision today exemplifies the kind of individual excellence that defines military capability and mission success. Your training under Patricia Hawkins has produced results that will be studied and respected for years to come.